Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night right here at the Sports Crib. As you can see down on the bottom, you can subscribe and donate right here on our YouTube channel. All proceeds go to help our programming and some of the different contests we have during the different fantasy football season. So, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. I see Dave and Reggie's here. So, Dave, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm doing okay, James.
Very good, very good. How's the weather up your way?
It was a beautiful sunny day. I was working out in the yard today. Got myself tired out.
Oh, man, okay. So, we got a little rain out here. What are you doing down there in Atlanta, Reg? You're muted. We can't hear you. Nope. Still no, Reggie. Still can't hear you.
Got some technical difficulties. Can you hear us, Rich? Right there.
We still can't hear you.
I'm gonna switch to this mic for now. Can you hear me?
There you go.
But I'll wait for my other mic to come in. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, so I got the bench mic in right now. We'll see if I can get the other mic back on. But yeah, this is the bench mic. The backup if I have to go to it.
You got to get your sound man in there, Reg.
Right, we can work things out here. We're working on it in the background, guys. We'll see if we can get it figured out.
All right, okay, guys. Yeah, it's a pretty good day out here in Cali, even though we had some rain. Supposed to get some for the next couple of days, but nothing major. So we're not going to slide off into the ocean anytime soon that I can think of. But anyway, Dave, I know you didn't give me and Reggie the heads up, so I'm guessing that there's a Sue's Corner tonight.
There is.
Okay.
Indeed.
Can you guys hear me? I'm back on my regular mic. Can you guys hear me now?
Gotcha.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
All right. Good to go.
Really good. Now, Sue did have, and it's a good segue into Major League Baseball. So, Sue has, other than Ohtani, the biggest name in baseball today is probably Paul Skeens, who ironically in some ways plays for the hapless Pirates, who probably exhibit the worst case of team ownership since Dan Snyder left sports. Ooh, that's
gracious, man. That's terrible.
Skeens is a phenom, super smart high school kid that went on to play for the Air Force Academy. His coaches and everyone else pushed him to transfer after his junior year to LSU so he wouldn't have to fulfill his military obligations if he graduated from the academy and could play baseball. He got even better there, gained weight and muscle, and became the amazing pitcher he is today. He's not crazy about the fame and hoopla that goes with it, but acknowledges that it is a part of the business of professional sports. But are the Pirates going to screw it up?
100%.
Most likely. Here's the math. And remember, he was an outstanding student and probably has this all figured out. His potential earnings could be, given Skeens is only going to be 23, you can pencil him in for 10 prime seasons at roughly $44 million per season, which is about average for your outstanding pitchers today. And you can value 4 years beyond that at, say, $25 million apiece as Skeens begins to decline in his 30s. Toss in an extra year because you assume he'll miss one along the way, and you have a 15-year deal worth $540 million or $36 million a year. Indeed, Skeens will make around $800,000 in 2025. I find that hard to believe. A $35.2 million annual discount. You would think the Pirates would do everything possible to maximize their likely brief time with the Wonderkin. You would be wrong. All told, the Pirates are poised to run an $88 million payroll per roster resource.
Wow.
Fourth lowest in baseball and $10 million less than what owner Bob Nutting spent 10 years ago. They did nothing with the offseason. There is no indication they have the business savvy to keep this kid on the roster. So odds are young Paul will just be a great memory for the fans of Pittsburgh in the near future. And that's Sue's Corner.
He'll be a Baltimore Oriole in 2 years.
I was gonna say, man, that's a future Dodger right there. That's future Dodger Yankee right there. They're gonna swoop in and take him out of that small market, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Pittsburgh has a history of hanging on. You know, Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Ben Roethlisberger. You know, there's and then the Pirates before Nutting, Roberto Clemente, on and on. They have a history of retaining players, but I don't know. This is kind of scary. You know, we can talk more about it when we start talking baseball.
I mean, at least you guys are good at retaining. When it comes to the Mariners, we're good at cultivating and then sending out to win rings.
Well, that's what the Pirates do too, though. I mean, they've had pitchers on multiple World Series teams. So,
I think our most famous blunder on that one was Randy Johnson. We're like, oh yeah, you're old. You're we're not going to pay you. And he only went on to win a series and 3 more Cy Youngs.
That's pre-Arizona Johnson, huh? I mean, that must suck.
Yeah, so much.
For sure.
now, was he with Seattle when he blasted that bird?
Yes. Yeah, when he blew that what was it, dove up?
Yeah.
He absolutely smoked it. Like there was nothing left.
That was incredible.
I mean, he only hit it with 100-mile-an-hour heater, so.
Yeah, well, Dave, there's talk that Skies is working on two more pitchers, a cutter and a sinker. What's going on? Is he going to be there opening day, or what's the forecast here?
Well, I think Paul Scanes is going to have to work on his batting. He's going to have to start seeing if he can hit for average and hit some dingers, because I think the Pirates, the problem that they have is who do they have to support this guy? And you don't have many guys come along like this, and how long is he going to be as good as he is? And, right now the starting rotation of the Pirates, maybe there's some potential there. They got Mitch Keller, and then they have a couple prospects coming up. Maybe the starting rotation will be there. The bullpen is going to rely on a comeback from David Bednar, who had like a 5.77 EIR last year. But if he comes back, there's potential bullpen. But the problem is they have no lumber. They don't have the bats, and you need to be able to score. I mean, he's not going to pitch shutouts every game. And the problem is are the Pirates acquiring the bats? So instead of his cutter and sinker, maybe Scanes needs to be working on his swing.
Maybe you might be right there, Dave. But it is interesting when you talk about the Pirates spending less money than they did 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I find that amazing. So once again, we're going back through the same old thing. About starting pitchers again. We talk about this kind of every year. It seems to be a recurring factor. What do you think, Bo?
What, for the Mariners?
Just
Our pitching is
pitchers,
money, but
just pitching in general. Yeah, I'm on the show.
okay, sorry. I mean, pitching in general.
I mean, every year we talk about guys getting Tommy John surgery just before
this is like an annual conversation.
I mean, yeah,
it is, and it's funny because it almost feels like it's more common today than it used to be, and I wonder if that's just because your speeds continue to climb, right? Just more stress on the joints. Because I mean, when you think back 15 years ago, there were like two guys hitting 100 miles an hour, right? Like it wasn't everybody hitting 96, 98, right around a buck, right? A lot of those guys were low 90s. I mean, you had Jamie Moyer make a whole career out of 86, So, I mean, I think some of it is just how much harder guys are throwing the ball. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about Tommy John, I think it's probably that, right? It's just how much harder guys are throwing.
Yeah, once again, I go back to the fact that we now have teenagers getting Tommy John surgery because of what their career might be down the line. Reggie, what do you think here?
Well, I was looking at when you compare the pitching, just 100-mile-per-hour pitching from even just 25 years ago to today, it's dramatically higher. And it was saying here that even in the 2022 season, there were thousands of pitches thrown at 100 miles per hour or higher. And I feel like that's got to be it's hard to not say there's a contribution there, because I mean, it seems like there's been more stress put on the joints. I don't think that I would know more than that. You know what I mean? I'm not a doctor. I can't really say what we could be contributing to this or have enough statistically speaking to look at and say, hey, where it's this much more number than this year than it was last year, and it's this much more number this year than it was last year. All I know is that for most of my life, it's a constant complaint every year.
I think Rob's right. It's the lack of steroids.
Got to go old school, man.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I know that the Major League Baseball is looking at it because pitchers, I think, amount to like 3/4 of the injured list on any given time. And so it's, for baseball, it's the shoulder and elbow problems for pitchers like it is for concussions in football. So now they're studying it, and some of the studies say that these injuries among the pitchers are like have tripled over the last 14 years. Wow. And I think, like what Bo is saying, how hard they throw the ball. And it's not only the fastballs, but I think even like with their curve balls and everything, they're throwing the balls a lot harder. And the irony is I looked up some I was using AI to just kind of compare the starting pitchers of the 1970s compared to the starting pitchers of today. And like the complete games that were done in the 70s, they pitched more innings. It was like 220, 250 innings pitched a season. That was like a bunch of pitchers would do that in a given season. And they pitched more innings in a game. They had less rest. That they typically were starting every fourth game as opposed to every fifth game today. And yet they had longer careers than today's starting pitchers. In the 70s, it was like 10 to 12 years for an average pitcher. That's the kind of career he could be looking for. Today, it's 8 to 10 years. Now, maybe money has something to do with it, the amount of money that they're spent, but injuries is something, and you did have injuries back then, a la Tommy John, okay? But I I think part of it may be this velocity, because before, the starting pitchers were expected to go at least 7 innings and go for a complete game. And if they were working on a no hitter or a one hitter, they would try to finish that game. Where today, starting pitchers, they go 5-6 innings, and then you got like a bigger bullpen to go. And so the only thing I can think of is, like Bo was saying, and I'm not a professional, I'm not a medico on this, but it just must be the stress that they're putting on their joints by how hard they're throwing. And the other thing is that the today's pitchers are starting younger.
That was the
Yeah,
point
for
I was
sure.
gonna make,
That's
is
also
there's
got
so
to be
many
a
more
point
reps.
too. Correct.
Yeah. So by the time they make their NL debut, they've thrown a lot more than the old school pitchers. So now, is it going to continue to be a problem? I think we have to see, is 2024 an anomaly, or is the trend going to continue? Is it
I
going to
think
continue to rise?
well, we've been talking about it. I know at least since 2022. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's funny because like on the football side of it, and baseball's exactly the same. Is when you think of quarterbacks that are going for like rotator cuff surgeries and stuff, and these kids are getting this done in high school and the first parts of college, because when they were kids, or like when we were kids, right? Like you'd play with your friends, but there wasn't specialized quarterback camps, and if you played peewee, you were handing the ball off a lot, right? Because you couldn't throw the ball just super well. But now there's all these quarterback camps, and similar to baseball, right? Like they have pitching camps and all of this. So when you have quarterbacks making it to the college level, they've already taken 10,000 snaps, right? Whereas, when we were kids, that would have never been a thing.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is the year-round.
Exactly.
You play baseball year-round now, where before you were going from football to basketball to baseball. You were playing multiple sports, and now, like, kids will be 8 or 9 years old. They're already having the private schools recruiting them.
Yep.
To go to private schools, and
Yes,
and
that's
then
right, for
they're
sure.
just focused. What's that?
And they're specialized. They're only playing one sport.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, very early. Very
Yeah.
early.
So, Bo, what can we expect from your Mariners?
Not a damn thing. I mean, so what we watched last year, right, is we were 10 games from the end of the season mathematically out. Then we go on a run. We miss it by technically one game, even though we were done for a while. But the thing that we didn't do was get better, right? So we kept our pitching. We have great pitching. Well, we didn't address the bats at all. And one of the bats that we could have brought back, we didn't. To Rob's point in the comments there, Kirby's already hurt. So that's awesome. That's super helpful. So we're already down a pitcher. And I mean, yeah, and we didn't do anything to get better in the bats. And unfortunately, just like last year, the rest of our division did. Like they've made moves, they've gotten better, except the A's. I don't really count them as a baseball team, but the rest of our division. So, the A's and the White Sox, they're basically, they exist, but we don't know why. But yeah, I mean, the Mariners are doing what the Mariners do. They are going to be just good enough to keep people coming and spending money in the stadium, but they're not going to be good enough to play in October because, we're already playing football.
Right. On to the real stuff, man.
So, what's happening with your Falcons? I mean, with your Braves, Reg?
Braves are the least of my worries here in Atlanta of all my teams. They've been winning here for a while. The thing about that is there's expectations for them. Like we expect them to win. We expect the Braves to be good. We will be getting Acuna and Strider back. We're very happy about that. So the expectation, the sky's the limit, man. The last few years, it's World Series expectation here. And that's a serious expectation we have here for this team. And this year is no different.
And you should. That's a great team.
Yeah, we've been very happy with how they've ran things down here.
Well, now we have to go to the other side of the coin, Reg. What's up with the Hawks?
Man, it is. It's a polar opposite, man. You went from the least of my worries to the most of my worries. But yeah, I feel like the Hawks, from what I'm seeing from Ricochet, the kid is not a bust. We took him first overall, and even though he's not a Wemby, he's not a bust either. So I'm very happy. And actually, Trey looks better with this young team. This young nucleus around him has brought out the best of Trey. The problem is it hasn't necessarily translated to winning basketball, and it's not necessarily impressive in my opinion, because we're not winning. So I think that Trey would need another superstar. I'm not sure who's out there at this moment, but I definitely think we're a piece away because we got a young team. We're injured. We can get Jalen Johnson back next year. He's a big signing for us. Maybe that moves things in the right direction. But it's hard to see us competing against the Clevelands, Bostons of the world right now. We're just not there.
Yeah, what about those Cavaliers, man?
Man, the Cavs, man. Yeah, I like what's going on there. Big fan.
Oh, what do you think, Bo?
I mean, they have, 2 15-game streaks this year?
Crazy.
That is crazy. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, what can you say?
Without the king.
They're balling.
Yeah. And that's without LeBron. LeBron who? But very funny situation here. I think when everybody thought that, when everybody went through, their thing about Luka being traded to the Lakers and AD going to the Mavs, we kind of thought that was, unusual, but I mean,
terrible trade is what we thought it was. Everybody thought it was a terrible trade.
Well,
aged like milk right now.
But hold it now. If it was a terrible trade before, look at what happened to the Mavs since.
No, it's exactly what you thought was going to happen.
It's confirmation of the terribleness is what it is. It's confirmation of what said terribleness of that trade, which half the universe thought was terrible. I'm still not sure why it happened, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what's going on there in Dallas.
I'm still trying to figure. I mean, we usually know as Mark Cuban is a pretty savvy guy.
Well, he's not.
It wasn't Mark. Mark only owns 27% of that team. It was the Adelsons who did it. The governor. They're the governor of the team.
They don't even want Cuban at the games. They're trying to freeze him out completely.
Goodness gracious.
So here's the only way I can rationalize this in my mind, based on how ridiculous that trade was. Right? You're trading for a guy that's made of glass, right? Yeah, he had a good year last year. Awesome. He's played a lot of basketball where he's been hurt, right? So you just figured it was a matter of time. Then you're pairing two guys that have elite talent but don't want to be the guy, right? So you have Kyrie, you have AD. Neither one of them want to be the leader, right? And then like clockwork, 3 days after arriving in Dallas, AD's hurt. Then you have Kyrie get hurt, a week and a half later, ACL done. You already did a trade that's hurting attendance. Your superstars get hurt, and then you're raising ticket prices at least 8%.
Yes, my friend in Dallas told me. I couldn't believe that. It's unbelievable.
Looks a lot like when OKC stole the Sonics.
Oh, man.
The pattern looks very similar. Man. Is you start hurting your...
Did Bo freeze on us?
He did.
Man, I'm waiting for for closure there. I need to see
For
who's
the team
stealing who
honor,
and where.
the ownership
Yeah.
group. So
There we go. Hey, there we go. He's
Sorry
back.
about
He's
that,
back.
guys.
Hey, Bo, who's stealing who? Like, who's going where?
So the thing is this ownership group has a very vested interest in Vegas.
Oh,
The
wow.
NBA wants a team in Vegas.
Man.
And they're still planning to do an expansion, but it means that Vegas doesn't necessarily have to be the expansion city. Now, this is just pure speculation, but there's some odd similarities to when they yanked my team out of here and it's sitting over in Oklahoma.
Goodness gracious, man. I still remember that. That's still some bad blood there. You know, that's
Yeah,
still
only every day.
I don't know. I still think LeBron has the inside ticket there to Vegas if that's what he wants. But yeah, maybe they'll come back to Seattle.
I hear Seattle might get a team. I'm hearing that's a possibility.
Seattle's going to get one. So when they do their expansion at the end of this TV contract, the two cities that are earmarked for them are Seattle and Vegas. But if they ruin Dallas where it sits, that other expansion team can go anywhere if they're going to try and get that team out of Dallas. So that's where it gets interesting. Because otherwise, all you did was absolutely torpedo a team that was in the finals.
Right. Less than a calendar year ago. It was crazy. Right? That's crazy.
It's not like they're scrubs. Like, they were in the finals. And then you're like, oh, yeah, our superstar is out of shape and terrible, despite the fact that he's had 5 All-NBAs in a row and was in the finals last year. But, yeah, clearly trash. Get rid of that guy.
Yeah, it makes no sense. He was the best player in the finals too. Let's add that too. Averaging like a triple double there. I don't. What is that unhealthy guy like? What does a healthy Luka look like? He's gonna be giving you like 75 points a game. Like, it's crazy. I'm not sure what their expectation is here, man.
He looks pretty healthy alongside LeBron.
Man, and that, guys, and that. They look incredible on the other side.
And the thing that's funny is when you think about the league, your two best players, right, are Luka and Joker. Neither one of those guys are like the pinnacle of physical fitness, but they're dominating the league. So I don't know what you want.
Yeah, it's like I said I did forget because we did talk about that sale where Mark Cuban decided to be minority leader, minority owner. But
you know he's kicking himself for it too. All the time. Anytime the NBA comes up, he's just like,
what the hell have I done? Now we're expecting Jeffrey to come in a little bit, so we're going to talk a little college football until he gets here. Actually, it's a combination of football and NBA basketball. In AA basketball, because as we know, we're coming into March Madness. So, guys, what do you think? St. John's is favored to win the Big East. So, is Rick Paterno the best coach in the history of college basketball? All he does is win, win, win. Bo?
I mean, he wins a lot. Like, I don't know what you want me to say there. I mean, yeah. I mean, that guy stacks wins like nothing else.
Yeah, I remember, when Rick was known for his suits. Rick was the man. What do you think there, Reggie?
I'm trying to see who's got more wins. Is it Pitino or Coach K? Which one has more? Which way has more W's?
Well, look at John Wooden's championships.
Yeah, that's it. John Wooden. So, the thing is, from college basketball, there's a lot of legends, a lot of giants there in the game going back. So I would have to really sit down, because when I think about Coach K, John Wooden, those kind of coaches, John Wooden was those unstoppable Kareem teams, I want to say. It's hard to just throw Pitino out there.
North Carolina guys too.
Correct. And there's like a couple of them, right?
Dean Smith.
So it's hard. I need to sit down to that question. That's not a question I feel like you could just say it right off top, and I could say, oh yeah, and plant the flag for Rick Pitino.
I mean, I don't think you could do that for sure, but definitely there can definitely be an argument.
Yeah,
which I think is nice. If you can even be considered with those guys, that's an accomplishment in of itself. To be honest with you.
I think he has a record that would at least put him within the top 7, if not the top 5. What do you think?
Well, I think, one thing to remember, didn't he have 123 wins vacated? So
Yes.
do you count those games or not? Like if you count those games, and he had a championship vacated. So if you take away a championship and 123 wins, then all of a sudden it comes down to, well, did the recruiting scandal that he got caught up in, does that impact him? But then these other coaches, every other coach that we've just mentioned have had their own scandals. But then it kind of becomes like a comparison. And in the case of
it's that old adage: if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right?
Right. And even John Wooden, as squeaky clean as he was, he got caught up in a scandal, and they kind of pale compared to. I mean, Pitino was the subject of an FBI investigation. I mean, it was pretty serious stuff. But that said, I mean, his team still won that. They still won a he's won, I think, 2 championships now.
Yeah, besides the one
and it's a lot harder to win a championship than it was in the 1960s and early 70s when John Wooden did it. It's much more competitive now. Yeah. So I would say I would not consider him at the top. I mean, it's hard. I mean, John Wooden, to me, I think it's 10 championships. That's hard to say somebody's better than him. But I think if Pitino, if he wins another championship, he's definitely, I think, right up there in the discussion as in the top 5. Because you got Wooden, you got Coach K, you got Dean Smith.
Yeah.
You got that Calhoun from Connecticut. I mean, he had a really big career. So. And I would not discount them because of the vacated wins, simply because the other coaches all had their own scandals, and it didn't cost them the victories or a championship the way it did Pitino. But pretty amazing. And I think to do it today, I think it's even harder to stay dominant today than it was 40, 50 years ago.
And was it 2 years ago? Who thought about St. John's except for maybe in the NIT? I mean, they were kind of mired in that Big East, like you said. You had Connecticut and Villanova. A couple other teams were involved. So, yeah, like I said, I would definitely put him in the top 7, and I hadn't even thought about those wins that were vacated.
And then with this, and if he won a championship with St. John's, would that be the 3rd team that he did it with?
Yes. That's why I say everywhere he goes, all he does is win, win, and win. After even after the suspension, he can. Evidently, it's more than the way he dresses, the way he can recruit. So,
Well,
legal or not, it's the way he recruits.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, it is much harder to win today. I mean, some of that is NIL, some of it's transfer, some of it's the fact that a lot of these guys do the one and done action, right? Like they don't get to build programs the way they used to.
Yeah, that's another part of it. Let's see. I see Jeffrey's here, but I don't see his face.
Can you hear him?
No, Jeffrey. Oh, there you are. Okay, there's Mr. Fan.
Hey,
Hey,
Hey, Jeff.
Greetings, Jeffrey. How are we doing this evening?
Good. How is everyone tonight?
very
Oh,
good.
pretty good,
yeah.
pretty good. We have some questions for you tonight, Mr. Fan. Usually it's Bo that we're talking about, and his two-team Pac-12, but tonight, Jeffrey, what's with the settlement with between the ACC and Clemson and FSU?
Yeah, that was definitely the the big story. Uh, 7-10 days ago. Uh, the short version is the way I look at it. Uh, it buys the ACC at least 5 years, but it may only buy the ACC 5 years. Is the way I look at it. um, once they put a number out there that schools that are thinking about leaving can target, I mean, they can start planning for that. I mean, it's still pretty high. I mean, we're talking well over $100 million, and you got to have the invites from the P2 before you move. But I think the positive part, if you're an ACC fan, is that you have bought some short-term stability, and it's who knows what the landscape is going to look like in 5 years with all the you know NIL and the revenue sharing and all the you know congressional stuff that could happen, and it could look completely different um, than it looks now. And I think the goal was just to try to find a way to keep moving along at least until the end of the decade, and they accomplished that. But on the flip side, like I said, now there's a number out there that the P2, if they're looking to expand, has a number of how they can kind of subsidize a team that they invite from the ACC and work through that. So it definitely did not buy the conference long-term stability, but in the short term, I think the next 2 or 3 years for sure, I don't expect any movement. But when the TV contracts of the Power Two, SEC, and Big Ten come open, I mean, it's I don't know. We're kind of all playing in their world, when it comes to the future of college athletics, and we'll just see. But for the short term, I'll still be talking ACC sports and maybe not just talking college sports or something.
Okay, all right. Well, sticking with what's going on, Mr. Belichick has decided that he wants to make UNC the NFL's 33rd team. What did you think when you heard that statement, Jeffrey? High
I mean,
expectations? I mean,
What does that mean? What does that even mean? Like, maybe I'll get some explanation here because that sounds confusing.
I think he's definitely looking at North Carolina, as a program, and maybe all programs are kind of headed in this direction. I mean, this is less like college athletes, and this is more business than college sport now. And I think he's going to treat North Carolina, as a professional team. I mean, he's going to, have the infrastructure with coaches and, talent evaluators, looking at NIL. I mean, as much, I don't know if he took grief, but as maybe some of the criticism that like Deion Sanders took. I mean, he kind of has maybe the modern day model of how to, um, build a program. He went to Colorado and just, you know, basically just tore through that roster and building it up through the portal. And I wouldn't be surprised if Belichick kind of takes a similar approach. If I was a North Carolina player, I really wouldn't be too comfortable about having a spot next year because Belichick is going to look at it, like he's running a pro team. If he doesn't think you fit the system, doesn't matter if you're, you know, a 4-star, a 5-star, freshman recruit from the year before. You've been a 4-year starter. I expect him to cut anyone that doesn't fit their system. And yeah, I think, I mean, he's going to take his Patriots approach, I think, very much to the Tar Heels, and we'll see if that, if that works out. But it very well could in this modern day. And then also from a notoriety standpoint, I mean, we've talked more about North Carolina football, than pretty much anyone has in years, and he hasn't even coached a game. They already got a primetime game early in the year against TCU. I think that was moved to Labor Day night. So I think kind of the comparison of the attention that his program is getting it's a fair one to compare it to what Deion Sanders did at Colorado. I mean, they drew massive ratings at Colorado, and I think North Carolina's may have something similar there. Now we'll see if he can really turn that program around, but he's definitely going to approach it like he's coaching in the NFL.
Yeah, he's going to be yelling at the kids. The kids over here at North Carolina Middle School can run that route.
Yeah.
Bo, is it Stafford? Stafford that's also trying to implement a program similar? It was one of the teams in the Big 20 now.
The Big 18. Yeah.
Big 18.
So I've heard something similar to that, but I haven't read into it. So that I'm not sure. I did have an update on the TV deal for your Pac-2, though. If it goes the way that they were hoping it would, their TV deal, if it goes through, would only give the schools 10 mil. So for them to run this program into the ground cost them 15 mil per school, because the one that they turned down that ultimately destroyed the conference was 25 mil a school. And now they're looking at one that might be 10. So I still think the Pac-12 ultimately dissolves.
And I think as far as like the ACC, it just segueing, I think there was a big fear within the ACC that they don't end up like what's going on with the Pac,
like the Pac-2.
The Pac-2, the unfortunate, legitimate athletic programs at Oregon State and Washington State. But I think that was a big part of settling too. Like, look, let's just, get this taken care of and, worry about it. Well, I wouldn't say not worry about it, but, let's just buy ourselves 5 more years. Because I think there was, if it could happen to Washington State and Oregon State, I think was a big fear. Hey, it could happen at Wake Forest and Boston College and, any of the other mid-tier brands if, they're not part of the P2. So I think that really played a big factor into the ACC settling.
You need to get some more wrestling programs in the ACC. There's only 6.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's on the ACC network. Like Virginia Tech has a pretty good wrestling program as
they do.
As one. So yeah,
I think they qualified 8 for the NCAA's, and Pitt is up there in North Carolina. So, but need more. There's 18 schools in the ACC right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keeps growing for now.
Jeffrey, we were having a discussion about Rick Pitino and whether or not he might be one of the best coaches in college history. What's your thoughts on this? I mean, he's got St. John's poised to win that Big East tournament. Where would you rank Rick?
I mean, I definitely think you got to put him, somewhere in the top 15 all time. I mean, he's won at a high level everywhere he's been. Going back to his Final Four team at Providence, and then he won, at Louisville, and now he's going at Kentucky, and he won big at he's winning big at St. John's, turned that program around. Former Big East power that had just kind of been, flying under the radar the last like 20, 25 years, or not even more, going back all the way to the 80s, the kind of a sleeping giant that he's awakened there. I mean, I think in terms of pure coaching ability, I think he's definitely in the top 15 of all time. I'm not sure where he is on all time. I don't remember where he is on the all time wins list. And, his reputation is a little bit marred by some of the stuff that he left with Louisville. So, I mean, I don't know if you can quite put him up there with the all time, greats like a Dean Smith or Krzyzewski or John Wooden or like that. But I think he's kind of like in that next tier, because he really is an unbelievable coach, and what he is doing at St. John's is proven that he definitely has a lot of in the coaching tank left.
Was Lou Carnesecca the last coach that was winning at St. John's, or did they have somebody else after that?
It seemed like they might have had like a tournament team or two in there, but I mean, that seems like the last time that St. John's was really on the national scene like they are now.
Yeah, most definitely.
That was a great basketball conference, that Big East. That was really something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It was Villanova and Georgetown and St. John's back then in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, it was ACC or Big East basketball. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Jeffrey, let's kind of catch up here to Mark Madness. How many teams make the dance? A lot of people are talking about this is, like the weakest ACC representation ever. How many teams make the dance, and how many you got on the bubble?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got 3 definite locks. I mean, Duke is clearly going to be a number 1 seed. Clemson, well within lock territory. They're probably looking at one of those protected seeds, trying to get as high as a 3, probably a 4 or 5 right now. And then Louisville, just a remarkable turnaround under Pat Kelsey. I mean, they're a number 6 or 7 seed. So those are the 3 absolute locks. That doesn't matter what happens in the ACC tournament, they're going to be in and easily in. After that, it gets pretty murky, but there's not too many teams that really have a good shot at an at-large bid. I do think North Carolina, with their recent play, is moving into is kind of positioning themselves, and a couple of the results already in these tournaments, like Ohio State going down, has benefited North Carolina. They played very well today against Notre Dame, which doesn't really help their chances, but a loss would have basically eliminated them. I think if they beat Wake Forest tomorrow, I think they're going to make the field. Might be one of the last 4 in. I think that Lunardi, the ESPN bracketologist, has already moved Carolina into the last 4. I wouldn't want to take my chances if they lose tomorrow. They're going to be squarely on the bubble then. But I think if they beat Wake Forest, and they do have a black eye of a Q1 record. I think it's like 1-10 or 1-11, and that's definitely a black eye against them on their resume, and that's definitely fair. But I was just looking at this earlier. If they beat Wake Forest, they'll be like 21-1 against Q2, 3, and 4 teams, which is still pretty good. They played a really strong non-conference. They were over 500 if they beat Wake Forest, or 500 on the road. They got into overtime with teams like Michigan State, led Florida with like 4 minutes left in that game the other day against Duke. They led that game in the second half. They were right in it with Kansas earlier in the year. I mean, if they would have just been able to steal any one of those games, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. So I think for North Carolina, I'm starting to get more positive on their chances to sneak in if they beat Wake Forest. Then beyond that, there's really not too much in the way of ACC teams that can get an at-large bid without, just based on their play. Wake Forest kind of played themselves right out of it. It started with losing at home to Florida State, and then they lost to Virginia. I mean, they were right in position to get an at-large bid, and I think at the very least, Wake Forest is probably going to have to make a run to the finals to be an at-large candidate. Stanford has a pretty decent record, but they're probably too far down the list. The one to keep an eye on that still might have an outside chance at a at-large bid is SMU, but they're going to have to pull a couple of upsets. I think they're going to have to at least get to the semifinals of the ACC tournament, which means they'll have to, I think, they'll have to knock off Clemson and win a couple games, and then they might get into the picture. So it is a little bit thin for the ACC as far as at-large bids. I do like where North Carolina is trending. Wake Forest has a ton of work, and SMU is going to need at least a couple wins because they have 0 Q1 wins, and they really don't have very many quality wins of any kind. So I think in the
funny
ACC,
when said like that. Actually, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
The way that you said that, like you have no quality wins.
Yeah, and SMU's had opportunities. I mean, at least North Carolina has beaten UCLA on a neutral court, but SMU has they got a big 0, and that's going to be really tough to overlook. Plus, they finished the season losing at Florida State, which I think that was a win that they really needed, not to bolster the resume, but when you don't have much on the front end of quality, you can't have negative, the bad losses on the other end because you don't have anything to kind of cancel it to cancel it out. So I think SMU is going to have it's going to be a stretch to get them in. I think the ACC will end up with 4, which that's a low number for the league. That's disappointing, no question. But it's not a matter of bracketologists being unfair to the league. This year, there's other years you could say that, but I mean, they should have been looking at least 6 or 7 bids because Pittsburgh and Wake Forest were in great position to have bids at the beginning of February, and they just collapsed, both of them, especially Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was on everybody's list for the tournament through mid-January, and then Jeff Capel just lost that team, and they absolutely fell apart in the month of February. And if North Carolina had stuck a win out of those Q1s, they would be locked in for the tournaments. And then you have those 3 plus the 3 locks, and the ACC has 6 bids there, and people are saying, oh, it's a little bit down, but it's not quite the way it has turned out to be. But you really look at Wake Forest and Pittsburgh kind of free falling, and if the ACC was down, they should have been able to take advantage of it, and they just didn't. So that's how it kind of ended up in that state. But I think North Carolina is playing well enough to sneak into the tournament. I do expect they'll beat Wake Forest tomorrow.
Okay. Jeffrey, the Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, said that the tournament is due for expansion. He says that 76 is the best number. What do you think, Jeffrey? 68, now 76? What about 101?
Yeah, so just keep going, man. Just keep going at this point, right?
I myself am not a fan of the expansion. I understand why they're doing it.
Money.
Because definitely, you're absolutely 100% right. It's about money. I mean, the tournament has gotten so massively popular that it just dwarfs anything that happens in the regular season. So why not just make it bigger and have 4 weeks of NCAA tournament? That way, you've got people watching the NCAA and college basketball for 4 weeks. I mean, that's one way to drum up interest, but from a pure quality and fan standpoint, I'm not a fan of it because we're already struggling to fill out a field. I mean, you're looking at teams. I mean, Texas is 6-12 in the SEC, and the SEC is fantastic this year. Not arguing that, but a team that's 6-12 in conference, that if they don't win the SEC tournament is going to have 15 losses, should not feel comfortable on Selection Sunday. Which if they expanded it, 76 team, they're probably going to they're going to be just fine getting into the tournament. We should not have, teams with 15, 14 losses, feeling comfortable on Selection Sunday. I mean, if you're one of the last 4 or 5 at-large teams, you were okay during the season. You expand that further. I mean, there's going to be a lot of mediocre college basketball teams in the field, and the only way I can really go for that is if they kind of change up the format. And if you win your conference tournament, you automatically get into the round of 64, and so those last 8 or 12 bids go to the teams that were on the bubble. If you're going to do that, that's the way I could go for it. I've never really been a fan of Dayton and seeing the 16 seeds have to play each other and one of them gets eliminated. I know that there is some argument for it that at least one of them gets a win, but I also think, hey, you've won a championship, you're into the field, and that Dayton should be like the last 8 at-large teams. But I'm not a fan of the expansion from a fan standpoint, but I understand why they're doing it, because it's definitely about money.
Bo, what about 98?
About 98?
Yeah, I said, what about 98? Like I said, 101. Two.
I mean, 98 teams is what you mean.
Gotcha.
Not the year 1998. He's
Right?
going through the mind, like, what happened in 98?
I was like, I feel like that's the last time the UW had a good squad. Yeah, I mean, like at some point, you got to stop expanding this thing. Like you're putting in bad teams. It's one of the things, the college football playoff, right? Like the 14 teams they keep talking about making it 16 and 18 for football. It's like, yeah, okay. Well, all of a sudden you're going to have some bad teams that are going to get routed week 1. Like, I'm not a fan. I get what they're doing though. They're trying to increase it. They're trying to sell more airtime, more tickets, whatever. I get it. But it's not a good watch. So like if you were going to go to the tournament, are you watching the, barely their team get smoked in round 1? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I think that they're up to 362 programs, NCAA Division I. So that would be over 21% of the teams being eligible for the tournament.
Out the gate, you start the season eligible, like 20%.
Right. So it's kind of like, I agree with Jeff. I like the idea of trying to keep it elite, and with the 68 teams, at least you get the chance for a Cinderella team to pull an upset, which I guess once in a blue moon happens. But to keep expanding it, for me,
now you get Cinderella and all the stepsisters.
What's that?
So now you get Cinderella and all the stepsisters too.
Exactly. So I think I wouldn't. To Bo's point, I'm not going to watch those games. Unless all of us, I hear on the radio that, hey, Dubuque has a shot at knocking off Duke. Well, then I'll tune in, but the chances of that happening are slim to none.
Well, and for you to hear that, you're going to hear that with like 4 minutes to go.
Right.
Correct. You're going to tune in then at that 4 minutes.
I know we got Jeffrey. You want to give us your final thoughts for the evening, my man? And thanks as always for dropping by and kind of telling us what's going on with the ACC. Maybe in 5 years, it'll be the ACC plus.
Yeah, maybe so. Who knows? at least in the short term, I think it's going to be status quo on that. But yeah, of course, we got March Madness coming up. I mean, as far as postseasons, I don't think anything beats March Madness. It's the most open, fair, and that's why I don't want to change it either. But I think it's one of the most open and fair tournaments. I mean, it's decided on the court. Um, the little mid majors have their chance to pull those upsets and make their runs, and that's the beauty of it. Um, so I can't wait for it. When it comes to like who's going to win it, um, I, I would probably take like these three teams against the entire rest of the field, and that's Duke, Auburn, and Florida. I think those three are cut above everyone else in the country, including Houston, and I might even say right now, I think Florida may, almost surprisingly, might be the best team in the SEC. I think Auburn's kind of, I wouldn't say they've limped home, but I mean they've showed a little bit of a weakness, especially on the defensive end. The last couple games, losing to Texas A&M and to Alabama at home, and Duke. I know they haven't played quite the schedule of some of the SEC or Big 12 teams, but I mean when they've had their opportunities, I mean they are unbelievable. I mean that is a absolute national championship contender. What they did to Illinois, a legitimate probably 6 or 7 seed, I mean beat them by 43. I mean, treated a legit NCAA team like they were standing still that day. That was probably one of the most impressive performances I've seen from any team the entire season. And I mean, they have a win over Auburn. They were down 11 in that game and outscored Auburn by 17 the rest of the way. When Duke is on their game, I don't think anyone can play with them. I mean, they have legitimately probably like 5 or 6 future NBA players on that team, and Cooper Flag. You wonder about players that are like, are they as good as advertised? And I think he's been as good as advertised. And I think John Shire has kind of figured out, how to have him in that offense with, the Proctors and the Malik Browns and mesh that roster together. And, Shire's been the one coach in the ACC. They've lost so much coaching talent over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, the Roy Williams and the Jim Boeheims and Tony Bennett's and Larinaga and Hamilton retired. I mean these are all like Hall of Famers, and most of these programs, didn't have not been able to replace these legends. But I think Duke is the one with Shire that's pretty much maintained. I mean, he hadn't won a national championship, but this year's Duke team is really, really good. If you gave me Duke, Auburn, Florida, I give you the rest of the field, because I think those three teams are who you'll see your national championship come out of.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. We appreciate your time, and hey, we look forward to talking to you as long as there's ACC sports.
Yeah, we got a couple more years at least. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one. Bo, are you able to stick around, or are we're going to get your last thoughts and talk a little bit about the Seattle trade?
Yeah, I got to jump out here in a couple of minutes. So
okay, well let's talk about Geno Smith, who's now a Raider. You got Sam Darnold, who's now a Seahawk. You brought in Valdez Scantling for, I think, an outrageous amount of money, but that's I think you'll tell us about that. So, Bo, what do you think about the impact of these changes on both teams? Because we had talked about Geno Smith, but I don't think anybody saw that move of him trading him to the Raiders.
I mean, if you were going to trade him, you kind of got it a little bit, right? Because you got Pete down there. But I'm going to share a graphic with you. And this is where this move is weird, right? So Geno wanted 45 mil, and they said no, right? They're like, we'll give you 35 to 40. He wanted 45. They couldn't come together. They sent him out of town, right? And they got, what they get, a third form, I think.
Yeah.
And so you go and you get Darnold. Darnold hits that number for them. So they're looking at that 35 mil, right? 3 year, 110 mil, right? It's a Baker Mayfield deal. Great. But if you pop that graphic up, this is where this whole thing falls apart, because these numbers are very, very similar. And when you're looking at pass yardage, they are within a singular yard of each other, right? If you look at the touchdowns, Darnold had more, but that had more to do with Seattle ran the ball in close to the end zone, right? You can't throw them in if you run them in. You look at the turnovers, the turnovers were pretty close. Geno was a little bit more efficient, right? With a 70 passer rating versus, I think it's 66, something like that. But the biggest thing is Darnold did that with a top 10 offensive line, right? Because his ability to scramble isn't to extend a play. It's when things break down, he'll stop his progression and run. Geno did this with a bottom 3 offensive line. Darnold's going to come here. This line isn't good. Like, so far, all we've done was bring Jones over from the Ravens, who had 43 snaps last year. Not exactly killing it, right? Like that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. So you have you have Darnold coming over with a significantly worse offensive line. Geno was one of the most hurried quarterbacks in the league. What have we watched when Darnold gets hurried? Sees ghosts, right? That's what we saw in New York with the Panthers. Again, when he's under duress, makes bad decisions. You watched it happen this last year, 14-win season, but the 2 teams that got after him, the Lions and the Rams, all 4 of those games were losses, and it's because he was under duress the whole time.
So you're saying it's going to be spooky in Seattle next season?
What I'm saying is they better get busy at the draft doing offensive line. The good thing is this draft is deep when it comes to offense and defensive linemen. So that is encouraging, considering they only went and got a guard so far in free agency, and not a good guard. Like, he hasn't been a consistent starter in a couple of years. So, they better hit home runs at the interior offensive line in the draft, because there's not a lot of guys left, right? The other guy.
What are they paying MVS? Like, what is the MVS situation? So why is that so? Is he being paid an outrageous number? What's MVS?
No, he's not. He's getting paid $5.5 for 1 year.
Oh, that's not crazy. Okay.
No, it's not crazy. But the biggest thing is, and this is why this is a good move. You're basically getting him for the vet minimum, right? Which is close to $5 million anyway. But what you're doing is you're adding a guy to the receiver room that's familiar with Kubiak's offense, which is our new offensive coordinator. So you get a guy that gets to help that receiver room get up to speed much faster than if you had a bunch of young guys that have never met Kubiak or how his system works. So they can be out there in the huddle, and, Valdez-Scantling can be like, hey, this is what this is, right? This is what we're looking for. So he gets to be that veteran leadership out there on the field, whether or not, he gets tons of playing time, or if he's the third option or whatever it is he ends up being. What he probably can do is ramp this receiver room up much faster than if everybody's learning it day one.
But Bo, your wide receiver room is pretty much like Pittsburgh. Who the hell is in your wide receiver room? You've gotten rid of DK and Tyler. So I mean, what does your wide receiver
he's
look
not
like?
alone. He's pretty good.
Well, JSN was our number 1 target last year anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they still got the number 1 guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, he was our number 1 guy. When you look at DK, right? Like we sent him out of town. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. But the thing to keep in mind is he doesn't run good routes. Like he runs a go ball well.
He runs straight, man. Right.
Yeah.
He runs straight.
Yeah.
He runs straight to the end zone. That's all. That's the one route he needs to learn, man.
That's the only one he runs well. Like, he rounds out the short ones. He gives up on short plays. He's actually dropped short balls. But when you look at him being a 1,000-yard receiver last year, he only had 66 receptions. So that lets you know what he's running.
He's consistently getting that 66, though. He's pretty good at getting. He's going to get you in that range, man. He's pretty consistent there, at least on in that way.
He is, but when you look at the Steelers, you got two guys that do the same thing.
You're correct.
Right.
I was so much wanting more to see that JSN name come across the board than DK going to the Steelers. I'll tell you that. Like we got two George Pickens now. That's what we got. Two George Pickens.
We're definitely going to talk about that. When we
I'm sad I'm going to miss part of it because from the outside, if you're interested in watching the world burn, right? You want to see Rodgers go to the Steelers, and you want to see them do poorly immediately.
No, it's blasphemous.
No.
Goodness gracious.
Just because, in the interest of watching the world burn, because you're going to have the ego of Rodgers, who's very much like you ran the wrong route and whatever. Then you're going to have DK, who's not going to get enough touches. That's going to be mad, and then he's going to also have Rodgers throwing him under the bus, and then Pickens is the same guy as DK when it comes to that.
Precisely.
Like it could be the most toxic situation ever. And for shows like this, amazing. But if you're a fan of the team, horrible.
Goodness gracious, man.
But in any event, no, I mean, on the Seattle side, it's going to be very interesting to see what it is they do in the draft, because if they don't address the offensive line, the year could be very ugly. If they do address the offensive line, it's encouraging, because they also signed DeMarcus Lawrence earlier today. And, getting a solid edge rusher that is a very heavy incentive-based contract. So he's going to be hungry. It's a 3-year, $42 million contract. Only 18 is guaranteed.
Okay.
So he's going to have to get after it if he wants to get paid. Then you pair it with the other guys that they've brought back on that defense. I mean, it's going to be an active defense. We're going to have a much stronger, front seven than we did last year. And so that's really encouraging. So if they can figure this offensive line thing out, they could be a solid team. I still think the Rams are probably better, but at least they'd be competing.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, as always, Bo, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you as much as possible, especially over these next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. No, I always love hanging out with you guys.
All right. You have a good one.
Yep.
Well,
take it easy, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Take care, Bo.
Yeah. Reggie, how long we got you?
I got to go negative 13 minutes ago, so I'm going to get up out of here. But I wanted to do it with decency, though, James. I wasn't just going to just pop out of here on you. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to do that to you, man.
Well, let's get your final thoughts here. You guys signed linebacker Divine Diablo. I wonder how that. Wonder what his mama was thinking. But anyway, you got him from the Raiders. You got 33-year-old defensive end Leonard Floyd. He signed a year deal, and you also got your cornerback Mike Hughes. He signed with the team. So Reggie, with the $100 million backup, what's going on with the Falcons?
I mean, it looks like the Falcons are trying to hold on to that $100 million backup. For one, they don't want to let him go. Like he's said that he wants to go start somewhere, which I think Kirk Cousins can start somewhere. As I've said on this show several times, I really do believe he can. But the Falcons are very comfortable with holding on to him as the number 2 quarterback. They have no issue with it. So, it'd be interesting to see how that goes and how that all gets worked out. Leonard Floyd's signing was actually not that bad of a signing to me.
It was only for a year. It wasn't like
correct. It's not like we didn't break the bank for it. And we're so terrible at that position that the sacks he averages is better than anything that we do on the team already. So we're already bringing more sacks to the team. If he just brings us 8.5, gets us 8.5, 9, as crazy as that may sound, that is actually be impactful for our team. So I don't mind that signing. Mike Hughes, okay. I'm not really, I don't feel one way or the other about that. The team to beat is just still the Bucks in the division. And until we make moves that I feel like what get us over that hump, I'll be maybe a little bit more excited. But I'm interested to see what we do in the draft, to see if we also keep addressing the defense in the draft. So I'm looking more so for that than any of these free agent signings. But I kind of like the Leonard Floyd signing, though.
Okay. Well, give us your final thoughts, Reg.
My final thoughts is for teams and bad franchises to remember that this time of year is for us. For teams that suck, like my franchise has sucked the past few years, this is our time of year because we are all the same right now. None of us suck until we get till September. Enjoy it, guys. And yeah, that's it. Enjoy this time of the year because we're all winning right now. Like we're all contending until things really get worked out in September and October. So enjoy it, guys.
Take care, Reg.
All right, see you later, guys.
Good. Well, Dave, it looks like it's going to be me and you. So
Yeah.
it's going to be short and sweet here. Okay, so let's talk about Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, he signed. He got his money from the Browns for the next. I think it was 3 years, a 3-year extension that he got. But on the other end, Dave, the Browns also acquired Kenny Pickett. And right now, considering the exchange for the Browns quarterback, you have Deshaun Watson that you're talking about that's probably going to miss most of the season, if not all. So right now, unless Cleveland goes elsewhere, Kenny is their number one QB. What's your thoughts on the Clowns there, Dave?
Well, with Miles, we found out how much money it took to make it worth losing. Because a few weeks back, he was saying he wanted a team that had a plan to win. He asked Cleveland, and he didn't like the answer, and he was going to leave. And they sweetened it enough where I guess he decided, well, yeah,
123 and a half guaranteed.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and lose for that. So we found that out about him. Of course, what that does is, you got a number of other guys. Micah Parsons, I think he still has to be paid. I think there's Hendrickson that has to be paid. But for me, it's TJ Watt because they've been talking about extending TJ Watt. So now all of a sudden the floor becomes $40 million a year. So, and I would imagine that Pittsburgh's pretty well committed to TJ Watt, but it's going to cost them more than if they had signed him earlier this year or even extended him last year. That's what that does. I mean, what free agency does is this is the opportunity for athletes to be able to flex their muscles against the teams. How much can I get? They have leverage at this point. So Miles did good there for himself, and I just hope he continues to lose in Cleveland. For Kenny, there could be a lot of irony here because now there are reports that Russell Wilson
might
be going to Cleveland and to New York to visit. But if he were to go to Cleveland and sign with Cleveland, that would be really ironic because Kenny Pickett basically asked to leave Pittsburgh because he didn't want to compete for the starting job with Russell Wilson. And so the Pittsburgh traded him. Well, he might be in a position of competing with Russell Wilson again to start. But I tell you what, if Kenny Pickett does start against Pittsburgh, and if Cleveland wins those games, oh my, there is going to be some pitchforks and torches going on in Pittsburgh. It's going to be an unhappy place.
Most definitely. Joey Bosa is now a Bill. He signed a 1-year contract, $12.6 million. They also signed wide receiver Joshua Palmer to a 3-year deal with $36 million. Good team, but is the Super Bowl window closing on the Bills, Dave?
Well, I think part of it depends. Like this year, there was a big bump up in the salary cap. And so, what's going to happen next year and the year after? Are there going to be similar bumps? Because if that happens, well, then it's just up to the Buffalo general manager to keep some winning pieces around Josh Allen. And, they've kept them competitive, and they have Josh Allen through 2029. He doesn't become a free agent until 2029. So, and as long as he's healthy and if he's playing at the level that he can play at, and you can put some pieces around him, I would say that Buffalo's window stays open as long as Josh Allen's a viable quarterback.
Okay. Another team, the Commanders, they picked up, as we know, a wide receiver, Deebo Samuels. They got cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. And they also signed left tackle Laramie Tunsil. What do you think? Commanders going all in?
Yeah, I think they can taste it. They started out this year. People weren't really expecting much out of them, and then they had a couple nice, fortunate plays that went their way, and then they just seemed to improve as the season went on. They got stronger as the season went on.
I think the Hail Mary was what turned around their season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then they had a couple other. They had like a field goal that bounced off the goalpost.
Right. Yeah.
Went in.
The double doink.
but they were getting better, and they have a nice young quarterback. This Jaden Daniels. It looks like he might be the real deal. So I think that they can taste it, and then that's why you see them making the type of free agent moves that they're making right now. I think that they're, what are the Giants going to do? The Cowboys have kind of been in disarray. And then, of course, you got Philadelphia to contend with, but then Philadelphia is coming off of the Super Bowl, and then they're losing pieces. So maybe this is an opportunity for from Washington, maybe they're thinking they can slip in there.
Yeah, definitely is. We've heard a lot of talk about the Colts and open competition for the quarterback spot, but the Colts brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson. But what does that say about the Colts scouting staff? If Daniel Jones beats out Anthony Richardson?
Well, I think that it was just some unfortunate circumstances for Indianapolis. Because normally you would say, okay, free agency, but this was kind of not a great free agency for quarterbacks. You had Sam Darnold, but he went. You had teams like the Rams re-signing Matt Stafford, so it took him out of the equation. And so there just weren't a lot of options in free agency. And then this is not a strong year for the draft for quarterbacks. There's even some talk that Shader Sanders may drop into the 20s in terms of overall pick, which I would be surprised at. I think he's going to be selected much earlier, but there's reports that he could slip.
That he could fall at least down to 20 just before the Steelers. I forget who it is that drafts just before us, but there are, like you said, there are rumors that he could fall as far as 20 if not
Yeah,
further.
and for the Colts, I think that they have the 14th pick, and are they able to trade up to compete for Cam Ward? But the problem is there's several teams ahead of them that
Yeah.
have quarterback needs.
Mhm.
And then how many viable quarterbacks are in this draft? They're saying that this quarterback class may be comparable to the quarterback class that Kenny Pickett was in, which is not good. Kenny Pickett was the only first round pick out of his class, and most believe that if Pittsburgh hadn't picked him, he probably would have slipped to the second round.
He would have fell further. Yes.
Right. So I think that Indianapolis kind of has themselves in a quandary, and then the thing is they took a gamble on Anthony Richardson, who can throw the ball a country mile, but then he kind of quit in the one game. He said, what was it? He was tired or something and pulled himself out of a game that they were trying to win. And, and then you're getting these reports on Sanders on is he as good as built? Is he a top 10 quarterback or not? Because otherwise they wouldn't be talking about him falling down to 20. And he did not throw the ball in the combine. So, are they going to take a risk on a quarterback like that in the draft? They might. I guess maybe that's their plan is to try to get a quarterback in the draft, but it's slim pickings.
Yeah, precisely. I don't know if that was a pun or not, but yeah, it is. Let's see. Show me the money. We got the Vikings. They re-signed Aaron Jones and their cornerback Byron Murphy Jr. They added a center, Ryan Kelly, and guard Will Freeze from the Colts to bolster that line. They also got Javon Hargrave from the 49ers, tackle. And they picked up the newly released tackle Jonathan Allen. What about the Vikings? You think they're set to make another run next year, or what? Even if they're even if they're going with JJ instead of Sam?
Yeah, it looks like they are, and maybe they're convinced that their team, and as Bo noted, that they had a top 10 offensive line, and they're looking at bolstering that offensive line. Maybe they think that they can win with JJ McCarthy, and maybe he'll be like this Jaden Daniels was for the Commanders. But it looks like they're all in. They got a strong roster. The big question mark is quarterback. And I think back to the Steelers back in 2004. You had a really strong team, and you had Tommy Maddox was going to be the starting quarterback with Charlie Batch as the backup. Charlie got hurt, and then Tommy Maddox got hurt, and then you had Ben Roethlisberger, which was a big question mark at the time. Well, what they did is they managed. He only passed 20 to 25 times a game. He was not passing that much at his rookie year when they won 15-1, and but they had a really strong roster. So this is almost what I see out of Minnesota is they have a strong roster, and can they support this quarterback, kind of carry him a la another example would be the 49ers with Purdy. You had all these weapons for Purdy. Minnesota has Justin Jefferson. It's a strong team. So we'll see what they do there. But it looks like they're going with JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. Now Detroit, on the other hand, they shored up their secondary. They signed cornerback DJ Reed from the Not Yets. They also picked up defensive end Marcus Davenport, and they picked up a tackle to protect the backside of Matthew. So they signed a bunch of linebackers. Most of them were their own. Derek Barnes, Anthony Pittman, Ezekiel Taylor. Are we still expecting that big rivalry between the Lions and the Vikings, or do you think that Green Bay made enough improvement to stamp their mark in here?
Well, I think Green Bay is going to be in the picture. This year, before Chicago kind of fell apart, I thought the AFC North, and they still might have been the strongest division in the league. But Detroit, what hurt them in 2024 were all those injuries on defense. And so, now they're trying to rebuild, that defense, get some key pieces in there, bring some people back. I guess is it Jared Goff quarterbacking? Their quarterback situation is settled. It looks like. So I would expect them to be competitive. I don't know if they'll be as dominant, but they're going to be competitive. But right now I kind of see Minnesota as, depending on how the quarterback does and how they scheme around that quarterback, I kind of see them in the driver's seat right now. Where at the beginning of last year, I saw Detroit in the driver's seat.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Now let's talk about our team. Well, we know that Justin Fields, he's not yet. The Falcons, the Titans, they acquired a left tackle, Dave Moore. I think he gave up 12 sacks last year. You got Najee Harris. He got a 1-year deal with the Chargers. And the Finns, they went and got guard James Daniels. Then, as Bo says, we acquired DK. I'm not really understanding this move when you know that you had Cooper Kupp that was going to be released. You got Amari Cooper still out there. So I'm a little concerned about this DK move, because it seems like, we just drafted another George Pickens. Then we picked up Gainwell. Now, I think, sometimes just because a guy is available does not always mean that he fits your scheme. Now, when you compare Pittsburgh's line with the Eagles line, and then the Eagles went out and got Saquon, not knowing that, of course, that was definitely an upgrade. But, once again, I'm not sure that, even though it's a 1-year deal, I kind of feel that, this is a reach. But talk to me, Dave. Maybe I'm getting off on the wrong foot here. You were talking about Russell Wilson going to Cleveland. Goodbye. Can we pack your bags? I know. I'm surprised that we didn't go after Cooper Kupp. But
yeah, and then on defense, you lost 2 starting defenders. Landon Roberts, he left in free agency, as did Dante Jackson. I think Jackson is going to the Chargers, was it? And Landon Roberts, was it Tennessee? I don't remember, but they're both gone. And I'd like to Landon Roberts. And they got Malik Harrison, who plays a lot of special teams, but he's 4 years younger than Landon Roberts. But I liked Elandon Roberts. He was a really good downhill linebacker. And Malik Harrison kind of fills the role. He played a lot of snaps for the Ravens, about 30 or 40% of their defensive snaps, but he played a lot of special teams. So he may be taking the place of Dirty Red Matakevich, who they did not re-sign, who played a lot of special teams, and Elandon Roberts. That's what I'm thinking, that they're seeing Malik Harrison as kind of filling two holes. But back to the offense. First, I think what we're seeing here is the difference between Kevin Colbert and Omar Khan. Kevin Colbert was a belt and suspenders kind of guy. And what I mean by that is he never wanted to leave a hole open. He would not cut a player until he had somebody in the pipeline to replace that player. You know, if he were down an inside linebacker, he would sign one in free agency and then draft one in the draft. You know, double dipper and always trying to avoid creating holes. Last year, what was a big deviation from what Pittsburgh had done in the past, in February, they released 3 players. You know, one of them was Presley Harvin, and they had no other punter on their staff, and they let go a couple other players before they were replaced. Last year during the offseason, they traded Deontay Johnson for Dante Jackson, so they filled one hole, but they created another. That's not what Kevin Colbert would have done. He would have tried to have kept that wide receiver position filled. So Omar Khan shows a willingness to kind of create a gap, knowing, hey, that's something I have to fill. Well, in the case of Deontay Johnson, he never filled it. So now we get to the quarterback situation, and I think another difference is that I don't think that Kevin Colbert would have gone out and signed a wide receiver like he did or traded for DK Metcalf unless he knew who was throwing the ball. Well, Omar Khan, he didn't. It's like, okay, we need a wide receiver. We're going to get a wide receiver, but he didn't have a quarterback locked down. The only quarterback they have under contract currently is Skylar Thompson, who's on a futures contract. And he wasn't likely to be, you know, one of the top 3 quarterbacks. So, and I really believed right up until Monday, until Justin Fields went to the Jets, that they were going to re-sign Justin Fields. And then it was like, okay, but if they don't sign Justin Fields, well, then they got Russell Wilson. They'll sign Russell Wilson. Well, they didn't do either. And now, again, this is one of these things of where it's not all under the control of the Steelers. You know, the players can now decide because they're free agents. They're you know, not under contract. But the deal that Justin Fields got was a 2-year, $40 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. So basically, $20 million a year, and we let a guy that had led the team to a 4-2 record at the beginning of the season go. And they've shown no interest. It seems like they've shown no interest in signing Russell Wilson. So there was some reports during the season that there was a problem between Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith. And now that's starting to, there must be something there because Pittsburgh has really shown really no interest in signing him, even though he took them to the playoffs. And, you know, he didn't play well those last 5 games, but I don't think those last 5 games were entirely on Russell Wilson. I think that The defense, they really fell flat too, contributing here. So I would have never guessed ayahuasca, as you like to call them, coming to Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden it's like, well, who's left? You got Jameis Winston from the Browns. You got Mason Rudolph, maybe.
You got Cooper Kupp.
Well, I mean, I'm talking quarterback right now.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, the backup for the Cowboys.
Oh, I was thinking Kupp from the receiver.
Yeah, no, I'm Cooper Rush. I'm sorry, Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush. Yeah. Because Coop is actually still available. He has not been signed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have Cooper Rush, and then the Patriots have a young quarterback that they're saying that, hey, they would like to give him a chance to play somewhere. But I think with the problem with the trade is they gave up a second-round draft pick for DK Metcalf.
Right.
And now with a lot of the players that they're letting go, like Landon Roberts, Justin Fields, Najee Harris, Landon Roberts, Dante Jackson, they could come up with, maybe 3 compensatory draft picks next year. And the draft is in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has all 7 of their draft picks for next year. So they could have 10 or 11 draft picks next year. I think what they're positioning themselves to do is to trade up for a quarterback in 2026. But at the expense of who are we going to have quarterbacking in 2025? And I clearly thought that I thought that they would offer Fields $15 million a year, that he would wait until the tamper period to entertain offers. And then I thought, well, Pittsburgh's going to end up signing him for 20 to 25 million. And that's worth it because they'll have the bridge quarterback until they can draft a quarterback in 2026. But they did not do that. Or Justin Fields just turned them down flat. That we don't know. So I want to see. There's still time. I'm just curious. What is Omar Khan going to do? Are they going to wait a month for Aaron Rodgers to finish walking on the beach to decide whether he's going to sign with them? And there was reports that he wanted $45 million a year. I mean, really? Would you rather have Aaron Rodgers for $45 million a year or Justin Fields, because it's just a short-term solution for 20 or 25 million a year? So I don't understand what their thinking is in Pittsburgh, unless these quarterbacks don't want to play there, and that's a possibility. Maybe I know that Reggie he really does not like Arthur Smith. Feels that he's I guess overrated. But maybe they don't like the offense that he has to offer. I don't have an answer there. So on the one hand, I think that Pittsburgh in the long term is looking for the 2026 draft to draft a quarterback. Maybe they'll draft a quarterback in 2025 as a flyer. But I think that they're targeting 2026. In terms of Gainwell, he's just to replace Cordell Patterson. And I think what the Steelers are going to do is to draft the running back and defensive line are 2 positions that are very deep this year. And so I could see Pittsburgh drafting a defensive lineman in the first round to kind of like an heir apparent for Cam Hayward. And then in the 3rd round, since they don't have a 2nd-round pick, unless they trade down, but then in the 3rd round, maybe getting a running back, since they've already signed a couple cornerbacks in free agency.
Yeah, we got Darius Slay. I didn't mind that signing. I thought that was a good signing. Only $10 million.
For a year. Yeah, I mean, just because I think that they're trying to develop Corey Trice is what they're trying to do, and so in the running back, it's supposed to be deep. Even in the third round, there's supposed to be some pretty good running backs. So then I see them drafting a running back. So then you would have Gainwell with Jalen Ward. Then there's a Jonathan Ward that's on the that was on the practice squad. He's still under contract, but then they'll draft a running back, and I think that's what's the running game's going to look like. Now on defense, the well, before we leave the offense, I guess I can take a little bit of time here. I'll go take a page from Bill and kind of drone on for a little bit. On offense, so wide receiver, though, the advantage I see to Metcalf, and actually this would have worked well with Wilson or Rodgers, is Metcalf might be just running a 100-yard dash every play, but you got to pay attention to him, and you got to pay attention to Pickens. And so that's nice for the moon ball, or it's nice for somebody like an Aaron Rodgers if he can still throw the ball with accuracy. And that should free up underneath your tight ends. You got Freiermuth, you got Darnell Washington. They signed this Parham, who's like 6'8" or 6'9".
Yeah, he used to be with the Chargers.
And then and then you got Calvin Austin, you got Roman Wilson. So that might free them up underneath. And plus you got the running backs that can catch and run with the ball.
But there's Cooper. You got Cooper Kupp available.
They could still sign him.
And you got Amari Cooper that the Bills haven't re-signed yet. Both of those are precise route runners that I think would have made much more of an impact than a DK Metcalf.
Yeah, well, I guess in an Amari Cooper would be like that would be like replacing Deontay Johnson. Probably, maybe an upgrade of the Deontay Johnson.
Most definitely.
Deontay Johnson was a route runner
now, isn't he?
What's that?
Deontay's out of football now, isn't he? I mean, the last place that he went was the Texans, and I don't know if they re-signed him. Yeah,
I think he might still be a free agent. I don't know that anybody signed him yet. So they could go that route, but either way, I think that it's fine what they've given, because even with his limited route running, DK Metcalf is an upgrade over Van Jefferson or even Mike Williams.
Okay, yeah, definitely, I'll give you that. Yeah,
and so I'm not too worried about wide receiver at this point. Offensive line, I was really concerned with Seumalo's play last season, and he's like 32, 33. I don't know if they'll draft a guard, but I think that they need help there. And then the big risk where they're at is by letting Dan Moore go. Well, now you're going to have to push Broderick Jones out to left tackle and Troy Fautano at right tackle. And neither of them are tested at those positions. And so that's a really young line. That's why I'm not a fan of Rodgers, because I don't think he has the mobility.
Of course not. And he proved that with the Jets.
Yeah, that's why, for me, Fields made a lot more sense. So, that offensive line, it's developing, and there's a lot of question marks there. On defense, a defensive line, Cam Hayward is probably entering his second to last season. He's contracted through 2026, and then I think he's done. If 2025 isn't his last year. And the problem that the defensive line has had is that they've given up too much runs up the middle. Broderick Keanu Benton is better served being bumped out to the end, and they don't penetrate. The only lineman that was really penetrating was Cam Hayward. So they're not getting to the quarterback, and they're not stopping the run. Well, what else do you have a defensive line for? So they got to get somebody in the middle to plug the middle and to push Keanu Benton out, and then he might be able to take advantage of his mobility a little bit more. Outside linebacker, edge, not a problem, right now. Inside linebacker, they did come to terms with the linebacker that was hurt. And I'm having a brain drain, but he'll come in. They have Malik Harrison along with Patrick Queen. And then they may need help at nickel cornerback, but it looks like if Darius Slay comes on board, they just signed this Eccles guy, and they have Corey Trice to pair up with Joey Porter. And at safety, they really just need a backup for this year. So we could still see some movement, some signings in free agency, because Pittsburgh doesn't have that many draft picks for 20. They have their first round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, and I think 2 7th rounds. So it's I don't need to go to amusement parks because I'm getting all my thrills and chills just from following the Steelers. I mean it's crazy, and there's a lot of fans that if Pittsburgh signs Aaron Rodgers, I'm fine with him, but Sue is like she's out. Like if they sign Aaron Rodgers, she's like,
I'll wear a paper bag over my head for the whole season.
Yeah, well,
I'll be like the Saints fans.
Yeah, well, I don't mind him. I think he's an intelligent guy, but
he can't throw the ball more than 30
rod.
yards anymore. He doesn't have the arm strength. He has no mobility, and he wants $45 million.
So they should let him walk. I just hope they don't sign him. I don't see he's in. There's something happened between Russell Wilson and in the organization. There's something wrong because they're not even talking to him. But all of his public, everything he said in public was perfect. And so now you're looking at a polar opposite in Rodgers. And I just don't understand that.
Yeah, no, no ayahuasca for us. I'm sorry. Like I said, I really hope that I can get a paper bag. I don't know, but anyway, no. I'm with Sue here. No Aaron Rodgers for me. I think we need to make a spectacular move. I don't know whether either it's with quarterback or somehow with our offensive line. We did lose a left tackle. Not saying that these guys were, all pro or anything like that, but you still have to replace them. I think Moore gave up 12 sacks last year, or was it?
Well, most of the season he actually played well. He was one of the better linemen, and then toward the end of the season, he but he wasn't the only one. I mean, the defense, Russell Wilson. No. But I mean, Dan Moore, he came on and he wasn't expected to play much as a rookie, and he ended up being the starter. Whenever I think Chuks Okorafor got hurt, and then he basically was a starter from day one as a rookie. Up, I think he played nearly every game, and I just wish him luck. I hope he does well with his next team, and I just wonder about offensive line coaching, because you see what uh, uh, who's the guard that went out to the West Coast?
He went to the Chargers too, didn't he?
No, it was to the Rams or the 49ers.
Oh yeah.
And he's doing really well. He's doing, they played him out of position, and then they put him back into his natural position, and he's doing very, very well. So I'm just not sure. I mean, my at first I was very pessimistic about the season. I was thinking this is definitely going to be the first year that they have a losing season since 2003. Then whenever they traded for DK, all of a sudden I started to become more optimistic because I saw that as an upgrade, actually. But now with this quarterback situation, well, now it's like, who's going to be running that offense? I think that's concerning because it impacts everything else. I mean, how are you able to put a scheme in place if you don't know who your quarterback's going to be?
Yeah, certainly makes a lot of sense. But I was, as I was one of those that advocated, like getting rid of both and getting somebody in that's going to be a more of a permanent fix. I don't think Russell was a permanent fix for us. But like you said, if we're projecting a quarterback, drafting a quarterback next year, then we do need someone to carry us over the hump. I'm looking for the Steelers to make some kind of impact on maybe a decent backup. As I keep mentioning, the Cowboys have one. Perhaps you could even go to a team. I don't know the answer right now.
Yeah, the Patriots has a young guy that a lot of people were kind of high on. That can throw the ball, a country mile, but again, that's for a backup. That's not for a starter. And right now they don't have a starting quarterback.
Yeah. Well, right now I really don't see Russ as a starting quarterback. Which I mean, I wish the Jets well with Fields, and maybe he'll go along. He'll get along well in that system. But I mean, he is the younger guy, so they do have a little time. But hey, if the Clowns want to take on Kenny Pickett and Russell Wilson, I have no problem with that. As long as, just like I keep saying with Tomlin, I don't mind you getting rid of him if you tell me who's going to be the next guy in line. If you give me a viable substitute, I'm good with it. And I can see a lot of viable substitutes for Russ. I think it's just a matter of how much money the Steelers want to pay, and but I do think that that is something that we're going to have to address. But like I said, I wasn't sure that either one of those quarterbacks were a mid to long term solution. But Dave, hey, as always, man, I'm getting you out of here by 8:00, man. Okay, give me your final thoughts for the evening, my man, and thank you, and thanks Sue for Sue's Corner, and hey, we look forward to talking with you again next week.
Yeah, no, I don't. Final thoughts. Just getting ready to watch the NCAA's in a couple weeks. The wrestling tournament. I really enjoy watching that. It's a great sport. But I'm just hoping that by this time next week, maybe we'll have some more clarity on the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. I don't want to be waiting a month. That's crazy. So, and hopefully you won't be wearing a paper bag next week.
I got one out there ready just in case.
All right.
All right, man. You have a great weekend, and hey, stay warm up there. Well, like you said, don't overdo it out there in the yard now.
All
But,
right.
give Sue our best, and have a good weekend.
Will do. Take care.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week, and we look forward to talking more NCAA basketball as well as our usual bag of sports. So have a great weekend. We enjoy having you on the show, and we look forward to talking to you again next week. See you later, everybody.